Faimoasa remarcă Geografia, înseamnă, destin, este valorificată strategic de Turcia. Țara se află la intersecția dintre Asia și Europa, iar conceptul de conectivitate este natural pentru turci, pentru că pe la ei trec mai multe coridoare de transport de resurse esențiale, cum ar fi alimentele sau electricitatea. De când rușii au început războiul din Ucraina, diplomația turcă își folosește inclusiv avantajele geografice și reușește să păstreze un echilibru din care toată lumea are ceva de câștigat. Mehmet Ogutcu a lucrat ca diplomat pentru Turcia și ne răspunde detaliat la întrebările despre abordarea practică pe care o are Ankara în cea mai complicată perioadă pe care o trăim toți. Sunt Cristina Cileacu, începe Pașaport diplomatic. Mehmet Ogutcu, former Turkish diplomat, welcome to Diplomatic Passport.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to join you.
După declanșarea războiului din Ucraina, Turcia a venit rapid cu propunerea găzduirii discuțiilor între cele două părți implicate în conflict. Diplomația turcă a oferit terenul neutru pentru prima întâlnire față în fața beligeranților. Chiar dacă acest pas nu a dus la un rezultat, turcii au continuat să joace rolul de intermediari între ucraineni și ruși, iar implicarea lor a început să dea roade. S-a deblocat situația exporturilor de cereale din Ucraina.
The topic today is exactly the Turkish diplomacy, because we see that Turkey is launching an offensive of diplomacy on all the fields with both the Western countries plus Ukraine and Russia. How long can Turkey keep this balance?
That's a very difficult balancing act, I must tell you, because, as you know, Turkey is situated in such a geography where you have to interact with so many neighbors, while at the same time keeping a relationship with your NATO alliance, with EU partnership, with US special relationship, which is being seriously eroded, and China on the other hand, the Middle East, Gulf, East Med, Greece. So wherever you look, it requires Turkey to play a real balancing act to protect its own national interests, while at the same time becoming a responsible member of international community. So in that regard, there has been serious mistakes in Turkish foreign policy over the past 2 decades, but recently there is a recalibrating of Turkey's foreign policy objectives, missions, in such a way that it will be a force to reckon with in its region, but also, as I said, as I repeat, protect its own national security interest as well as its economic priorities in the region. So in that regard, yes, Turkey is playing a balancing act in a successful way, I must say, compared to many other countries.
Before all these diplomatic maneuvers, Turkey was not in a good shape. Before the war in Ukraine started, actually, Turkey was not in a good shape. Its economy was a mess. President Erdogan's relationship with the Western leaders were rather cold. Did something change in the meantime? Is Turkey seen different? Is Erdogan seen different by the Western world?
Yes, I think things have changed significantly. For a number of reasons. I think number one reason that Turkey's a bit expansionist and very active foreign policy have not served its national interest. Turkey has been, in a way, significantly isolated in its region. This is not normal for a country, of Turkish size, all the way from China to Germany, from Russia to Saudi Arabia. Turkey is the largest power to reckon with, economically, militarily. Therefore, its foreign policy had to be changed. And I think Erdogan acted in a pragmatic way this way. As you know, it improved relations with Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, now with Israel and Egypt. And so, as a result, I think Turkey is developing win-win proposition. I think the second reason is the economy. Turkish economy is not doing well. Of course, everywhere we have the high inflation because of the energy price and prices, and also sort of stagflation in European and American economies. And Turkey has a fair share of that, and economy is not in a good shape. Therefore, Turkey needed to open up and establish new channels, not being so assertive, not being so aggressive in certain areas, and be probably using its soft power credentials more than before. And that's the reason why there has been a change in Turkish foreign policy. I think this is the pragmatic approach of Erdogan and his team, realizing that nothing has worked in the past, being, glorious, grandeur, power in the region. So rather than disturbing other neighbors and powers, Turkey is now playing a role of its own, becoming a regional power that it deserves to be, but also interacting not only with neighbors, but also with Beijing, Washington, Brussels, and other key capitals.
Except with the fact that Erdogan recently threatened Greece in a very Russian style. And let's add that all this diplomacy of Turkey, as you said, Erdogan is very pragmatic and is known for this fact, is also helping the president to establish once again the idea, the image of a strong man, because next year in June you'll have elections in Turkey. Will these successes, because you call them successes, diplomatic successes, turn Erdogan into a more autocratic president?
Well, actually, success is a relative term. Successful in the sense that it has reversed the previous policy and came back to the stage with a more realistic grounding of its objectives rather than dreamy projects. So in that regard, it's successful that Turkey is coming back to its common sense and also to the table where it can talk to its partners. Yes, there is an election coming up next year in June. This is critical, life and death matter for Erdogan. That's the reason why its foreign policy, its economic policy have to be re-engineered to serve the outcome of the next election coming up. And I think for Erdogan, losing this election will be a very severe blow to him personally, but also to his thinking and his party. And therefore, Erdogan, yes, has turned to a more autocratic way of governing, and we have seen that. The new constitution that he pushed forward in a referendum gave him sweeping powers almost in every area. So executive, judiciary, and legislative more or less merge into one. But now we see that the next election, if he wins again, I don't think it will be a Turkey which can easily be governed because of so many problems now accumulated. And if the opposition wins it, there is a huge task, colossal task of restoring what has been perhaps undone or destroyed or eroded. So Turkey has huge challenges ahead of itself this year and next year. After the election, it's not going to be easy one running the country, neither for Erdogan nor for opposition. But we have learned our lessons because in the past we complained that the weak, fragile coalitions are not able to govern the country effectively. But now we also learned that the one-man strong presidential system is not fit for this country. So it's leading to more autocratic, undemocratic, and inefficient ways of governing the country. Therefore, I think we have to find the middle ground where it's not going to be autocratic, but powerful government, checked by legislative and judiciary in that regard. It has also, of course, implications for the foreign and security policy as well. So you have to have a more democratic approach, more sort of consensus-based approach to foreign policy, rather than using gumbo diplomacy where needed, or flexing your military muscles whenever there is a serious foreign policy challenge. So Turkey is already a powerful nation in many regards. I think through diplomacy, through negotiations, and we can make headway. So I think this is true also in its relations with neighbors, including the dramatic situation we are experiencing in Ukraine and Russia. And it is also likely that this region will have new conflicts emerging if we cannot contain them in Ukraine.
De ce rămân turcii la masă cu toată lumea și nu fac o alegere între cei care susțin lumea condusă de reguli și cei care consideră că invazia și supunerea vecinilor este cea mai bună soluție, adică între Occident și Rusia? Înconjurată de atât de mulți vecini cu probleme foarte diferite, diplomația de la Ankara lucrează practic și se adaptează după caz atât la respectarea regulilor, cât și la reinterpretarea lor acolo unde nevoia o cere, de pildă incursiunile militare pe care le-a făcut în nordul Siriei, cu scopul de a îndepărta curzii care trăiesc și luptă acolo de granița turcă.
Do you think it would be a moment when Ankara will have to choose between the West and Russia? Can Ankara afford this?
Well, unless Ankara is really pushed to the extreme limits by the West, I don't think that Turkey will make such a fateful choice. So either the West or Russia-China axis. And Turkey is in the middle of these two worlds, and it's the only power that can bridge the gap. We have seen this in Ukraine crisis. Ankara is the only Western power talking to Putin, Zelensky, Xi Jinping, Joe Biden, and those in Brussels. So therefore, we need countries like Turkey, a middle-sized heavyweight in international relations, but able to talk to all parties and interact economically. You know, trade flows, you see, investment flows, technology exchange, intelligence sharing. Therefore, I don't think that it's the question of Turkey moving away from the West towards an axis formed by China, Russia, and Iran. So Turkey insists to stay in the middle, and Turkey also wants to be recognized as such, because sometimes, you know, we discuss with my colleagues whether Turkey will be joining the sanctions against Russia. I tell them, look, how could you expect a country like Turkey, which is under US and EU sanctions, to join sanctions against a neighboring country, whatever the reason is? So this is also immoral, asking that, because first, I think the EU and US should remove the sanctions against Turkey. Then I think it will be morally feasible to ask Turkey to join the interests of NATO, EU, and whatever you are asking for. Therefore, I think we have to be consistent here. What Turkey is doing is a responsible way of dealing with Russia, condemning what it's doing in, of course, Ukraine, and working with Ukraine very closely to defeat Russian, invasion of or annexation of Crimea, Donbass. Turkey condemned that, doesn't recognize. Also, Turkey doesn't want a broader conflict in the region, because if Ukraine is defeated totally, and then Turkey will be facing only Russia in the Black Sea. We don't want that. Turkey wants Ukraine as a counterweight also to Russia, alongside Bulgaria, Romania, of course, and Greece. Therefore, Turkish foreign policy, I think, right now, no matter how much we criticize it for its past actions, is the right one. Trying to balance its relations, but also playing a bridge to the West. As we have seen, for the grain export corridor, Turkey played a critical role as a guarantor alongside the UN and signed an agreement with Russia and Ukraine. And now this grain exports are moving through the straits under Turkish and UN control, supervision. The same way, Europe's largest nuclear power plant in southern Ukraine is under serious risk. There's a huge, I think, risk of it being another Chernobyl. And then Erdogan also offered this mediation to Russia and Ukraine, and alongside the International Atomic Energy Agency in Vienna, to play a critical role here. So therefore, I think it's not easy, it's not also right to characterize Turkish position black and white. Mm-hmm. So Turkey, not disenchanted with its relations with Brussels and Washington, and tries to establish its own regional independent policy, but at the same time also staying loyal to the principles of NATO and its relationship with EU and the United States. But don't expect Turkey to do whatever West is dictating. That's not going to happen.
Turcia continuă să susțină independența Ucrainei și, în egală măsură, să facă afaceri cu Rusia. Interesul major de securitate pentru turci este ca ucrainenii să aibă propria țară în granițele recunoscute internațional de dinainte de atacul rușilor. O Rusie care ar învinge Ucraina va fi convinsă că poate face la fel și cu alte țări care nu o ascultă, iar în zona Caucazului, de exemplu, sunt multe state unde turcii au nu doar interese, ci și populație înfrățită.
You did say that Turkey wants an independent Ukraine because of its interest of security, of course, at the Black Sea, together with all the neighbors. But what if Russia will go out of this war in a way that is defeated completely?
That's going to be terrible, not only for Ukraine, but for everybody. That means the West will have lost as well. You know, the West has stood firmly behind Ukraine, supporting militarily, economically, logistically, but not directly involved, because you know, if NATO does that, that means surpassing the threshold of war with Russia somehow. But if we lose Ukraine, I think it's going to be a huge earthquake in the region, and Turkey will suffer from this as well. So, as you know, Turkey and Russia are partners right now, economically, you know, natural gas, oil, coal trade, tourism, defense industry, you name it. However, if Russia gains the upper hand in Ukraine, then in Caucasus, you know, in the Azeri-Armenian conflict, Russia also has a key role to play. Then Kazakhstan one day, because they share more than 7,000 kilometers common border, and if one day they decide to move to the other side of the border where there is also a sizable Russian minority, and then what happens in Moldova, in Transnistria, Baltics, so Russia will be a very, very aggressive power, difficult to contain. If China joins the game, because the real game, in my opinion, is not between Russia and the West. The broader conflict, in whatever form it takes, will be between Beijing and the West. And so this is all in preparation for. If China also joins the game, first starting to harassing Taiwan, which it already does after the visit of Nancy Pelosi, and now the Chinese aircrafts and also Navy ships are violating territorial waters of Taiwan. And then I think we are going to move to a more non-democratic global order in which the West influence will be less and less. And the West will not be willing to engage in military confrontation because it's already losing its competitiveness, technology, population-wise. If you put China and India together, it makes 2.8 billion people, and then Indonesia and others. Therefore, I think we clearly see that there is a power shift from the West to the East, led by India and China. And then, if we have this non-democratic practice of invasion, annexations, non-recognition of sovereignty, and there is going to be huge trouble around the world, not only in Ukraine. Therefore, Ukraine is the water test for what's going to come in the world in the next decades. And in that regard, I think we have to do everything possible not to lose the independent sovereignty of Ukraine, but find a solution in which Russia can be accommodated. I don't mean that, accept all the concessions that Russia demands, but find a diplomatic solution that will be lasting. And how this could be done, I think once there is a will, I'm sure there is going to be a way to achieve it. Otherwise, we will be moving forward in a Cold War environment. If the Russian troops stay in eastern Ukraine, in trying to also intervene in southern Ukraine, and Kiev feeling so unsecure, Kiev also wouldn't like to sacrifice its national interest for the sake of NATO. And so what's going to happen? So we have, then countries like Turkey, I think, will be very, very useful, critical in a way, to make sure that there is sort of a balance of interest. There's sort of a channel to talk through, rather than sending only the missiles and warships. And in that regard, I think, as you said, Turkey's role is unexpectedly growing. And Turkey has become a power whose actions have been closely scrutinized around the world.
Mehmet Ogutcu, former Turkish diplomat, thank you so much for this interview.
My pleasure.
Atât pentru astăzi, dar rămânem în continuare online pe pagina de Facebook a emisiunii și pe contul nostru de Twitter. Revenim cu subiecte noi din lumea diplomației și a politicii externe, vinerea viitoare de la 11:30 și reluare sâmbătă după miezul nopții.